getting better every day. Absolutely getting better. You had one question was 100%. When it came to the concepts for yesterday, blocked, constant, and varied. Those concepts, I'll just read the percentages: 184.6, 96.2, 88.5, 84.6, and 88.5. We did bring back a few questions, assessment questions from previous days related to the stages. I have to go back and see what the actual numbers of those questions were, but I believe we're still seeing improvements. The scores on those, there were 5 questions there. They were 96.2. Then the rest were 69.2, 73.1, 69.2, and 53.8. But I believe that the ones that I selected were 50% and below. So we're still seeing an improvement here. It has to do with motor and autonomous stage. Characteristics and what your learning objectives are. Those, I have to say, a generalization of what those particular questions covered. And then, other than that, I'll give you the information, but I don't think there's a whole lot that needs to be discussed. So we'll move on to today's material. Yes? Verbal cognitive, there's not a whole lot of anticipation. Now, what's anticipation? You don't, and not anticipating, you don't know what's coming. But how does anticipation actually work? It helps prepare you. What would you base that help on? That you already have. So in verbal cognitive, anticipation isn't there. So what stage would you start working on anticipation? Motor. And what would be the goal of autonomous?
To be
you see it, you do it. Now, I'll be honest with you, you can also use it against an autonomous person. Like a fake. Because they do too much anticipation. They're so automatic, fake works. Fake not work as well against verbal cognition because they're struggling with whatever information they have. So that's where anticipation and how it's in the motor stage. Other questions before I move on? Now's the time. I have a few minutes. 11 and 12 were learning. They were learning objectives of the motor stage and of the autonomous stage. We're going to have a slug group this afternoon. Yeah. So I'll leave that to if you have specific questions. General questions I'll try to answer, but specifics we'll leave it to the slug group. I have to say this. I have to say my praises to the teacher leaders. I really do. You all have years that they have been working with me, and they have made incredible strides. And it's made my life. I talk with you for 30 to 45 minutes in the morning, and then I get to cruise around with all the groups. And when a new issue comes up, I hop in, and then I can hop out, and I can actually watch. It allows me to give even more in depth. But they have it. They have it. They come to me with ideas and reflective thinking. They do reflective thinking every day at the end. Come to me and say, this is what we're thinking now. So, well, I'll get to where one of the reflective thoughts that came up yesterday afternoon and we talked about this morning, and I'll do that as we go through a little bit of review. We are going to move on to random practice today. Random practice. And today is the day that you must separate the word random from the word unpredictable. Random practice uses unpredictable order. But then so does varied. Varied uses unpredictable order. This is where it's going to get confusing. Because if you start using random for varied and varied for random and unpredictable, and you start mixing the three up and thinking, I can interchange these because they all mean the same thing. Random, varied, labels. Unpredictable is what they have in common. Unpredictable variations vary. Unpredictable tasks, random. Gotta keep that straight.
So random variable labels and unpredictable
Is what each label represents.
And the way they're different is random is talking about multiple motor programs and varied is specific to one motor program.
One motor program, but unpredictable variation of that one. And that's why we've chosen to use unpredictable to try to, we were making a prediction that we needed to help you with the terminology. So that's the first thing that you really have to concentrate on today. Random is unpredictable motor programs. Unpredictable motor programs. Constant, because we're going to do random constant today, is that correct?
Yes.
We're doing random constant. Random means unpredictable order of programs.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Random means unpredictable order of programs. Two or more programs, unpredictable order. So what would random constant be? One variation, that's constant. So each program will only have one variation. Each program will only have one variation. But you will do each program in an unpredictable order. Can I say this? What's that? Yeah. So let's say throw and kick. Clearly, my mind, two different motor programs. I'm going to throw 15 feet. I'm going to kick to a specific target. Throw to 15 feet. One program, one variation. Kick to a red cone. One program, one variation. But I will say throw, kick, throw, kick, kick, throw, kick, throw, kick, throw. But you're always throwing 15 feet and you're kicking to the red target. So whenever I say throw, you only have to deal with one variation. One variation. But you keep changing it, makes it random between the programs. Variation is whatever you're doing repeatedly for that particular motor program. It could be target, it could be distance, it could be speed, it could be... This is where you still get freedom. You get to choose what the variation is.
Another way to say it is you don't vary the program.
Very good.
It's
Thanks,
the
sir.
same program. It doesn't ever vary.
Just when you do it, it's unpredictable. Not random. Unpredictable. Unpredictable. Now, of course, this is all, I'm going to do an intro here. I think it'll make a lot more sense when we get out there and spend the rest of the day doing learning experiences to help you connect what I'm saying to activities, learning experiences. Yes.
Okay, I understand two different motor programs, but I'm looking at the sports and activities that I do. Okay, so I'm saying, if I had volleyball, a form pass and a set motor program.
Form, pass, and a set. Yes.
Okay, so I could say form, pass, over the net, set this time.
Yes.
So I mean, it would be there's two different motor programs, but I can say I can throw the ball and say set. Here's the spot you're going.
Okay.
Set, form pass, form whatever. So those are two different. That's how I.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to do today.
Yes.
You're going to do.
You're going to do today.
And so let me just see it. So varied would be. I'm not just saying. Varied would be this. If I take a motor program, it could be 15 feet, 8 feet, 15 feet.
That's what you did yesterday.
That kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Just run that.
Random is unpredictable. Don't use random to define random. We all heard that one. Don't use the word to define itself. So random means unpredictable order of programs.
The constant is the same.
You'll see. All right. I just want to make sure that I'm giving you the textbook definition. I'm giving you some examples, but they're cognitive examples. The next step is to physical examples. That's how this institute this week has been designed, and I think it's been really helpful.
It seems like I know this and I've done it.
You have.
All of these practices before, just.
You have. Here's the thing, is no one has ever taught you how they relate to each other. We've all taken, I took my motor learning class. I came out of the motor learning class and I had no idea what the difference was between a block, constant, random variable. I took a PhD level class in motor control and motor learning, and I still didn't know what the difference was. It wasn't until I started working with this organization, working with teachers who are trying to use these terms, that I realized no one knows how to do these things. I think I'm a pretty smart guy. No one was teaching me what they meant, so that became my mission, to work with this group to help all of you. No, you've heard the words. That doesn't mean, remember, hearing the words at this stage, that's definitions. That's definition stage, lowest stage of any kind of learning or cognitive development or understanding. Next is, what are the characteristics? So I'm giving you characteristics. We're giving you new terms to help you separate those definitions and characteristics. What's the last stage? Application. That's what we're doing the rest of the day. Application. So don't feel that you missed something in your education. You probably did. Other questions?
They all use the same thing. So they just using the question as a motor skill or a program or a motor task.
As long as you realize that motor programs are what are used to create the motor task or the motor skill, then I'd say interchangeable. If you look at my model, I don't have it up there. If you look at the model, these are really good questions. I'm going to take just a second, and then I'll move on to another confusing concept, so I need to make sure I leave enough time, because I'm going to throw out some more words that you've already heard, and you're going to get confused again. Okay, so the motor program, you know what, I'm using my mouse on a plastic table. And then the one on my screen doesn't work, because I can't see. Oh, there we go. Okay, thanks. All right, so here's motor program. So where would we put motor skill or movement Right below it. So they're all the things that happen after the brain has made its decisions. Other quick questions? Okay, here's what we're moving on to. So I've already explained random. That's one thing we're going to do. We're going to do random constant. Is that the only thing today, Drew? Random constant? Open. Oh, yeah, no, I meant just from the practice, just random constant. Okay. Now, some of you are moving on and going open and closed skills. Okay. Now, you notice that we've added a word into our definition. We've added a word, or two words actually. Open skill. In parentheses, I say dynamic environment. Closed skill. Static environment. What does dynamic mean? Moving, changing. Static, stationary, stable. Okay? But the really important word is environment. Environment. So what would a dynamic environment mean?
Outside
A wind, an opponent.
Right.
What would a static environment be?
Oh, no interference.
No opponent. Nothing's changing. Okay? So we're going to start with that. Everybody comfortable with that? I'm going to give you some examples in a second, but I want to understand. Dynamic environment means things in the environment are changing. So would the location of a pitched ball be a dynamic environment or a static environment? Dynamic. Dynamic. Because as I'm standing there, isn't it changing every time? It is something I have no control over. I have no control over.
Oh, you're hitting.
I'm hitting. I'm the hitter. Now what if I'm the pitcher? It's a static environment because does it matter what the batter does for me to pitch? I have control of everything. So I let go of the ball. What about golf? Static at the time of the performance. Could it change from performance to performance? But we're talking at the time of the performance, I know everything about where I am, how I'm standing. Is it in the sand, wind? I know everything. And I make adjustments on my own pace. Yeah.
Is the environment everything that a person is identifying as a stimulus? I mean, there's stuff out there that, so it basically be dependent on the person.
Keep going. You're going in the right direction.
So, I mean, that's just.
We had a term earlier this week about the environment. Selective attention to the relevant moving environment. Irrelevant to what they have to do unless the performer makes it relevant. So when you watch basketball, I love basketball, watching the free throw from behind the back, and the people are waving, and the person just sinks it. Yeah, well, I don't want to go back to selective attention right now, but that's the idea for selective attention. You must selectively attend to the relevant environment. If that relevant environment is dynamic, we have an excellent skill. If that relative environment is static, we have a closed skill. Now there's a very easy way to test this. Can you do the movement with your eyes closed? Could you throw a pitch with your eyes closed? Could you even throw a strike with your eyes closed? Now, remember it's a game, but you can. I can hit my golf swing with my eyes closed. Can you hit a baseball with your eyes closed? You changed my environment, Matt. And could you spike a volleyball with your eyes closed? Could you even do a volleyball pass or set with your eyes closed? Now, here's where it gets really relevant. When you're setting up your practice activities and you're having students pass the ball back and forth to each other, what kind of environment is it? It's an open, it's dynamic. Even though they're stationary themselves, because can your students hit the ball the same way over and over? Well, which one do you think is more difficult to do? Open environment. Open, not closed. So when we talk, so Rock, I saw your hand.
So hit the ball off the tee.
Yes.
Open or close?
What do you think?
I think it's close.
I think it's close too. Okay.
So you have possession to start. That's pretty much close. Still, like ball hitting it off the tee. Whereas if the ball is coming, it ends up being open.
But like the quarterback who's throwing to different receivers, that's still open and they have somebody can hit it.
Okay, wait a minute. Interesting. Let's make sure, let's talk about the situation. What if you're just throwing? The quarterback is just throwing.
In a game situation?
No, I didn't say that. No, I know. Yeah. So we have to, and you're making the point for me. You have to define the situation. Yeah. And someone at context. You have to define it. If I'm throwing to a stationary target, I'm just playing catch on the sidelines, throwing a football is no different than throwing a baseball. If I'm in a game environment, my receiver is moving and their defensive player is moving and I got people charging at me, are all those relevant?
Yes.
So the context says, it's open.
For the person catching it, so that's
Always open. Always open. Even on the sideline, catching is always open. So think about this. You want to do a task with your first graders in the verbal cognitive stage and you have them toss the ball back and forth to each other. One student's got it easy. The other student has it hard. Make sense? So we're adding a new level of what you have to think about when structuring your practice. And you have to identify what environments are you dealing with.
Catching is open because the environment is dynamic. What is dynamic?
Okay, so what's the most important thing in a catching test?
Keep your eye on the ball.
Okay, but why? Why is that's a nice cue, but why is it that we should keep our eyes on the ball?
Because it doesn't always come right to
Right,
you.
because the ball is the relevant part of the environment, relevant stimulus, and it is dynamic, it's moving.
You don't know where to
So, and this is where we're all trying to get, because I see you write your critical elements and I see eye on the ball. But what I want you to be able to tell me is, why are you seeing that's a critical element? Why is this? Do you need to keep your eye on the ball in golf?
Yes.
No.
Can you try it?
Do you know where the ball is? Do you know where the ball is? Do you know what your body's doing? Shouldn't you be able to coincide what your body's doing with where the ball is located? Why is golf so hard? I said, should you be able to? I said, should. Why is it so hard? Because we don't practice creating a repeatable swing pattern. That's the difference between novice and expert golfers.
So the relevant factor in the catching is that the ball may not go directly to the target.
And so the way that we help you to account for that relevant factor is dynamic, is keep your eye on the ball. And so actually the critical feature is tracking the ball, not keep your eye on the ball. The critical feature is track the ball. Now, that's my difference between a cue and a critical feature. A cue is a word that says you're trying to get them to actually track the ball, but the critical feature is tracking the ball. Other questions? Yeah.
So it seems to me that I'm trying to think of we're talking about striking or throwing or something.
Good.
What I'm thinking is, let's look at just movement.
Good.
Can you walk with your eyes closed?
Depends on the context.
But, okay, can you do a jumping jack with your eyes closed?
I would say yes.
Would that now be a closed skill once you learn? Okay.
Yeah. The environment.
I'm just trying to get myself out of it.
No, that's good. I mean, do that. Ask yourself, ask these questions, ask the teacher leaders. They've been struggling with this 2 years now. They're there. They are there more than they think they're there, but they're there. Ask them. Discuss it among yourselves. You can figure this out. Okay? But realize the reason we want you to talk about open environment skills, closed environment skills, is because of what it does to the level of processing and complexity when you make that switch. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're teaching dance and it's beginning,
Uh-huh.
it's always going to be an open skill.
Why?
Well, if you're, okay, if you're teaching swing dance, how
If
can
you
it
have
be
a partner?
stationary? Yeah. How can it be stationary? I mean,
Okay,
static,
remember,
sorry,
okay,
static.
no. It's what's in the environment that you're moving in has to be static, not your static.
But your partner isn't
Right, so for swing dancing, when you're trying to grab another person's hand, that automatically makes it open. But some of the dancing that I've seen in the activities that where you're not a partner, now the relevant environment is static.
Right, so when you're talking about what kind of dance to teach.
Start with static dances, no non-partner dances.
I have a question in regards to that. So let's say it's choreographed already.
Okay.
So performers are moving, but each performer knows what the other movement is. It's still static.
The environment's static, the floor is static, the walls are static. Now remember, this is not in place of practice structures. This is in addition to structuring the practice for learning, you must consider what the environments are for learning, and that means for you all another higher level of processing is how do I put these two together.
And the connection between the different stages of learning is really
And we taught that there. So it's like practice structures, stages of learning, open or closed environments.
But you know, Jim, for me, the best guide is the content standards because they are designed with those things taken into consideration. So if you look at that, it will often give you open, closed, and type.
And I will say, I will agree with you. There are sometimes when the content is a little off, but you're right. In general, the sequence up to the content standards does follow a lot of this. But there's also some ones that they leave it up to a lot to you.
I was thinking, because Jim and I were talking, so golf is the great closed environment skill example, but I would say that's a really difficult skill. So it's not always going to align, but to me, I think if you have a choice, batting off a tee, a pitcher throwing, tossing you a soft toss ball, or really pitching to you, if you have a choice, you would always start as close as you can first, and then obviously make it more.
Here's the thing. Remember, the environment is static. You're still moving. The problem when we have, it's not that closed environments or that skills are easier to do just because the environment is static. Because in order for you to do something within a static environment, to do it over and be successful, what must you be? You're not static, but your movement must be very, it must be repeatable. It works both ways. I'm not saying static does not mean easy. Static just means the environment isn't moving.
So for clarification, closed skill, you determine when you're going to start the movement. Open skill, the environment determines when you're going to start.
Another good one. Yeah.
So does this have any connection to the motor learning stages? Like, this can still happen in the verbal cognitive. It can happen in motor and it can happen in the autonomous stage. So it's not like you're only going to see this to become autonomous.
This is task-related information, and so it depends on what task you're teaching at different stages. You can take an advanced golf class, closed skill, autonomous. Shooting a jump shot in basketball, verbal cognitive stage, still open. So it's what you're teaching that day. Just another thing you have to think about.
And again, this is another way to support the critical elements that you are pulling. So you used an example a while ago about keeping your eye on the ball. That was one of our critical elements of one of our teaching.
That's what you say is a critical element.
And so, understand, come back to me.
Okay. So I want to make sure you understood this. Keeping your eye on the ball is a cue, not a critical element. The critical element is that the ball is moving in the environment. It is a dynamic, open environment. And in a dynamic, open environment, you must track the object. That's the critical element. How do you track the object? How do you get your students to track the object as a cue? I hope that you track the object by saying, keep your eye on the ball. That's just a cue. That's not the critical element. The critical element is it's an open environment. I must track the object. Yeah.
I don't hate to play with words, but I actually think that this is just a game of words because the only way you can track the ball is to keep your eye on it.
Sure.
We don't have a sense of smell that can tell the ball is somewhere.
I disagree with that.
So I think keeping the eye on the ball is tracking the ball. So one could argue that that is a critical element.
I'll offer you this. I will always ask you this question. If you tell me that a critical element is keep your eye on the ball, I will ask you why. What would your answer be?
Because you need to know
You need to track the ball. Why do you need to track the ball? To know where. So, you know what I'm saying? It's what's that data mining thing? The queue is at the top, and it's support. Yes.
So if I'm blind and I'm playing goal ball, I'm tracking it with my ear auditory. So I can see where it does make a difference. Because we're assuming sight, but if we don't have sight and we're playing with the sound, and we use those balls so that our students do know where they're at.
We're trying to come up with a way to make an open environment activity be able to be performed without play.
Right. Okay.
I'll get to you in a second.
I just hear a lot about like the track the ball, and it's actually depends on if you're the thrower or the catcher. You don't always have to track the ball. So like as the football thrower, if you're doing it on a close skill, you don't have to watch the ball going out of your hand. This is sometimes going to be open skill. So basically, like what we keep on saying, that's why we probably also use the cue because it doesn't happen in all the situations.
Yeah.
Make a differential for the equipment.
You're absolutely right. I don't know if I would ever use keep your eye on the ball in a throwing skill. We were talking about that too. But it's misused in golf. Keep your eye on the ball as a cue or as a critical element. Because you don't need to keep your eye on the ball. The ball's there. And so I want you to think about this. If you get them to thinking that the most important thing is to keep my eye on the ball, swing their arms differently every single time, you have directed their attention to something that is not a critical element.
What would you say instead?
What is that?
What would you say?
What would you say?
Keep your head still?
I wouldn't even say that.
So don't even.
Wait. Let me get to why I don't think it's even that. Because I think it's impossible to keep your head still. I think it's impossible to keep your head down. Here's what my cue to a critical element is. Feel where my head is at setup, and whatever I do in the swing, I want my head to be right there when I get back. Now, could you do that by keeping your head still? Absolutely. But you do that by having your head rotate. So either way, whether it's keeping your head still wouldn't it be most important if the distance from my head to that ball, remember the ball's stationary, so if I know this distance, and I start at this distance, didn't I set up my club at that distance? So wouldn't it be important that when I come back through, my head is at that distance? If you actually watch Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson and all, their heads move. What do their heads move? How do their heads move? Consistently.
So maybe we just need to rethink as practitioners how we give feedback, because it doesn't always have to come in verbal. And we talked, and that's last year's content, but something that would provide feeling or pressure on your head that would give you a sense of if you're moving it or not might be more effective than a verbal feedback. Like, I mean, it's just like change the way you think about giving feedback kind of thing.
Back to the leadership thing where you're all taking on different roles. I mean, we can do that with content. We can all do that with content. Tom?
No, I wasn't, because when I didn't mean to, I'm anti, I'm sorry, when I thought about the whole time I was thinking about, I was thinking what was said about the people baseball. I think about the blind skier, the blind runner. Their cues would be very different than what our cues would be. Yeah. And that's, I think, what you're trying, I think that's what you're trying to say.
I am.
And I'm thinking about, in baseball, my understanding, I don't know, I believe it's been shown that when we play tennis, we actually don't see any of the ball. We actually don't, because we see what, 1/23 or something like that. That's why you have film strips. We actually don't see the content.
You don't.
And the whole idea is to keep your eye on the ball. You're trying to track the ball to your racket, is what you're saying, as opposed to keeping your eye on the ball. So that's
You're getting it, Tom.
Yeah.
Check for the spin and.
I'm sorry, I lost the point again on why is it important to understand open and closed or skill classification. Why is it important? I forgot.
It impacts how you teach the content. We've been talking about this. What information, what are the critical elements? It depends on the environment what the critical elements are. You can't just say this is a skill, hit the ball, and everything be focused only on this, the body. Okay? It changes what we determine to be important. In a closed environment, keeping your eye on the ball is not critical only. Okay? So you have to, what Drew was trying to say, you have to go back and think about all the things that you've been using to try to help your students learn a motor skill.